Hi everybody. Today we're going to do a repair on the lid of a Ninja style blender. I've looked all over the internet for ways to repair this and almost ended up buying one because I was afraid to take this thing apart. The problem with it is, as you can see, this handle no longer locks down, and if you turn it on and try to make it work with that thing popped up, it won't. You actually have to hold it down, hold it down, and then hit the button. There you go. And as soon as you let go of this handle, it'll automatically shut off. We'll shut the power back off here. Now the reason for this wasn't too hard to figure out, is on this side of the top there's two small white buttons that are controlled by this release button, and they're supposed to pop out when you push it down and connect into the two slots in the back side of the handle here, and that holds the handle down and allows it to operate properly. Now I have to admit, I've already taken this apart and discovered the problem, and when I did I also discovered a lot of mold and crud under this, so when I do take this apart for you, you might be surprised how clean it is. Yours most likely will not be. But it's also a good opportunity to clean it out really well. So, as we can see, this button, when you push it down, these things are tracked like it is, but it should come back up, and these should pop out, again engaging these slots. Alright, I'm going to show you how to take this lid apart. I've seen them on sale new for between $35 and $45, but I'm going to show you how you can fix it yourself with just a few simple tools, a couple of small screwdrivers, Phillips, maybe a pair of needle nose to help you manipulate some of the smaller parts, and about $2 worth of springs, and maybe not that much depending on the price you can get. So let's go ahead and get to taking the top apart and seeing if we can fix this thing. Okay, the first thing we need to do is take this thing apart, and I looked at it for a long time trying to figure out how to do it without breaking it. So we have to get into the guts here somehow. But I happen to be looking right here, and if you notice there is a seam that runs down here and runs down here. So I figured this thing runs down here, and all the way around. So I figured this thing was either glued together or snapped together, and it was time to take a chance. If I broke it, I broke it. We'd have to get a new one anyway. But I decided to slowly start separating it here, which it does, on either side of the spout, and finally just pop it off. Now, as I said, when I first took this apart, it had a lot of crud everywhere in here, and it came apart a lot harder. Don't be afraid to force it, but try not to break it. I have to give you a disclaimer here. It is possible. All it really does is snap around these areas here, and here, and around these edges here, so it should come apart pretty easily. Now, if for some reason the handle should come off, don't worry, it's just these little pins. In fact, I'll go ahead and take them apart first and show you how. They actually pull right out. You might want to do this to clean it up a little bit too. Nothing too hard about them. They just pull out, and this comes off. I found a lot of crud in here and in these areas here. And set this aside. Make sure you don't lose any of these parts. I suggest that when you do snap this apart for the first time, do it on a larger towel than this, so if for some reason parts should start to spray, you'll be able to recover them all. So once we got that off, here we're to the problem area. This was the release button here, and as I said before, most of this area of mine was real cruddy. It looks really clean. I think you might be shocked by yours depending on how much you use it. And the first thing you're going to do is take out these 4 screws here around this white pad, and use a medium-sized Phillips for that, and just back each one of those out. And you might want to have a little parts cup or box or something to put everything in so you don't lose it. There's 4 of them. Whoop. Okay, and lift that up. Okay, I see one of the screws popped out already. Make sure you don't lose any of these. I'm going to set them all aside here, including this one that popped out. Okay, the next thing we're faced with is this thing here. It's the button, and the button actually lifts right off. Now, if there's any questions about how it goes back on when you're rebuilding it, I'll go over this again. But this slot here lines up with this tab here, and the release faces towards the center of it, so that's a good way of remembering in case you forget. I'll set that aside. And now here's what I found on mine. When this thing is operating properly and you've got that lid, that handle down, these things are supposed to be fully depressed. Now, as you saw earlier in the video, they were only sitting out here, and you can see why. There's two springs here, one on either side, and they should force this thing all the way out. But what I found when I took this apart, these are only partial springs. Most of each spring had corroded and broke off, and I found the pieces down in these areas here. So these springs are kind of a weak point to these things. So I'm going to lift this out, and I want you to note before I do, there's a little washer here and here that kind of act as a back to the springs against this plastic stop here. So all you need to do is lift up on this and pull it out, and make sure you don't lose any of these parts. I already dropped one of the brackets off. It's somewhere down in there. Let's see if we can get it out without doing too much damage. Well, it is down in there somewhere. Oh, I see it. I see it. It's right here. So there's the part. Look, there's even there's one of the stops. There's one of the broken washers, just a portion of it. There's a small piece of the corroded part from before. So that's basically what the problem is on this portion, is these broken and corroded springs. Now I went to Ace Hardware and found these springs for 59 cents a piece. You can probably get 2 out of those. I got 4 of them just because I wasn't sure how this was going to go. And let's set this all aside because there's one more thing you got to work on. So there's the new springs, everything here, and it's a good idea as you're disassembling this to lay it down in the same way you picked it up. In other words, this side of this is got a lot of ridges and creases in it. This is the way it should go, and if there's any confusion, just think about how that handle would interact with these. There's a beveled edge there that it would push it back so it could snap over it. So you definitely want that up the way the handle's going to come down. So we're setting that aside. Now the other thing that has springs in it in here are the two things that latch this, I guess they latch it into the top of the Ninja, these two things. You can see them moving back and forth here. Now they have the same 2 types of springs on them with the same 2 type of backings. This one's okay, it's broken part off. This one was completely corroded. All that's there is the little brackets. There's nothing to spring that back out. Now these are real easy. These just, the part pulls out like that, and same thing on the other side, but the little stop gasket or washer, whatever you want to call it, well, it did pull out on this side. It doesn't always pull out. I guess it pulled out on, it's in there somewhere. There it is with the spring on it. So be sure you keep all these gaskets. They appear to be, all 4 of them appear to be the same, so if you get them mixed up, don't worry about it. And this is what you're left with basically. And trust me, it will not be this clean. I can't stress that enough. I actually soaked this, all these parts in Dawn and dishwater for over an hour, and then I took this outside and took the garden hose on a high pressure focused spray and cleaned the gunge out of all these little cracks because it was really nasty. Okay, well that's that. We're going to go ahead and get to the rebuilding part, and first thing we're going to do is, well, we're going to get back to that building report. Okay, so I did a little experimenting with these springs. What I did is I took the biggest part of the original spring out and I took it to Ace Hardware. This is part of the original. It was longer. It's broken off and corroded. And I got this at Ace. It's an 1.5 inches long, much longer than the original spring of this. So I'm going to take one of these and cut it right in half. At Ace, this was in, they have a bin of springs there, compression springs, and this was in their number 3 bin. I'm not sure about the diameter. But take the spring from your original Ninja, any one of these 4 that's big enough to still get a size off of, and do this. Now this is zinc. If I had the option, I would do this with stainless steel, and it would probably last forever. But like I say, I'm just trying to get this thing back online, so we're going with the zinc. And I've actually cut one in half already, and this is about the size I got. They're actually a little longer than they need to be, so I'm hoping the tension isn't too strong to allow this to operate freely. I think we're going to see some problems or some difficulties when we go to reassemble this. It's going to be a lot tighter than the original. Okay, we're going to start with the the things that secure the top to the pitcher itself. And we want to do these, remember this is the top of the lid, here's where the spout would go, looking down. We want to do these with this flat part facing up on either side. So we're going to put the spring in here and get this in here and kind of get it started on there so we can push it up. And the same thing on the other side. Flat side up. Get it started. Get the spring in here. Oh, also when you cut the spring, the end you cut should probably go this way because it goes against a much flatter part of this, and that way the gasket that goes on the back will go on that nice factory machined part. So let's push this back here and get this started. You know, I'm thinking I should cut these a little smaller, because I'll tell you what has to happen. This little thing has to go on the back here, and then it's all got to stay together while I'm trying to reassemble this, and I don't know if I can get it to do that. Okay, we're going to try cutting these springs a little shorter. Maybe we'll match this size, maybe a little bit longer. Let's try that. Don't lose those, very important. And we got that out and that out. I'm missing one of my half springs here. Ah, here it is, okay. I'm going to try cutting these a little shorter. And always, if you're going to cut it any shorter, cut it off the rough end and keep that original factory end as much intact as you can. And I'm cutting this down now about almost the size of that original spring there. What I think we want to do is get enough on, cut it down small enough where you do get a little protrusion out the back there. Make it easier to put that that round thing on. Yeah, that one on the left's a little longer. Let's take another ring off of there. And now let's try it again. Okay, like so. Remember the flat side up. It in there. Yeah, this is going to work a little better. Now to get these rings on the end, you might need a needle nose to hold it there while you're pushing it in. Okay. Okay, we got this in place, fully extended. We got the spring there, and if you can see, you got the little black washer on this side of that wall there. And that looks pretty good, actually. Do the same thing with the other one, making sure the flat side's up. Don't lose the spring. Machine side towards the little grommet, or factory cut side. Okay, we'll do the same thing with this. We'll pull it out a little bit, get on the other side of this wall. You want to get that pin on the other side of this wall here, and then put the grommet on. And the grommet's got a flat side, so I'm assuming that goes towards the spring. And okay, that's in there. Okay, now these have got spring action back in them where they didn't before. So that part's good. Now we're going to put in this part that latches the handle down, the part that was giving us the problem in the first place. Now, as I said, you have to remember which side this goes up right. So this is the rough side. It's got all the etchings and stuff in it, and this is the side you want up. It's much smoother, and if you need to remember, there's the beveled edge that the handle would hit to push that in and then lock back over it. So we're going to cut one of these directly in half again, because I think I can make these a little longer. They're a little bit easier to manipulate. So let's roughly go about there for half. I'm not putting a ruler on it. Here we go. Oop. Yeah, there's a little bit of difference, but okay, we're going to do the same thing that we did with these on this thing. We're going to put one on here. Now, see, they are a little bit long again. It might be hard to get those posts in, but you got a little more working room up here, so I'm going to try to do it, because I think the longer these springs are, the better that action is going to be, unless it's actually too strong and you can't get the handle to close. Now, in order to do this, let's do this side first. We're going to have to get this spring and push it in past this point, and then hook one of those little grommets on the side and get it. Here, let me explain that a little better. Yep. We're going to have to push the pin in and get the little rubber grommet past this wall here so it'll hold it on. Kind of like... Okay, that side's not on. Alrighty, I might have to cut these springs a little shorter. I'm only making them bigger because I'm hoping to get this to last a little longer. I wonder if we want to try doing both sides at once. Try this technique. See, these springs stick a little bit past there. Try putting the grommets on either end. Hold them on with your thumb. Then try getting them with your finger and thumb and pushing them past. Oh yeah, and they dropped right in there. Okay, you got, see the grommets on this side of the this wall here, and there you got your spring action back in here. And that's some pretty good action now. I think that should work pretty well. Okay, so I cut these springs about the length of that whole white post there. And the ones underneath I cut a little bit shorter because there's not as much working room down there. Okay, well that's probably going to turn out to be the hardest part, I think. Okay, everything's springy. Now, when you go to put the button in, remember we talked about this earlier, there's a slot right here that matches up with this tab between the pins here. So it's going to be turned this way. On this one it's with the release towards the center of the Ninja. So it just drops right in, these two, just like that. And look at that. We didn't have that before. I hope they're going in far enough to come off. I guess we'll... Okay, right now we've got everything in place, and what we're going to do is replace the thing that holds the button in. There's only one way to do it. These screw holes go this way. They're offset on the bracket like that. Now before you do it, you want to make this tab and this tab line up with, and you have to press these two things in. It's a little complicated. And if you see this slot that appears when you open these up here, this has to go down into that slot because these pegs hold these things back. There, okay, now they're in place. They're in place. That works. Don't press on this without holding this down because this whole thing will fly apart. Now, we want to get these screws in here. Just hold everything in place as well as you can. Get the medium Phillips. Let's get one in here. Don't over tighten these because you're just going into a plastic base here, so just take them down to where they're snug. Two, and once you got the second one in, you can pretty much let go. And four. That might be magnetic. Okay, get that into place. Close it up. Remember, don't over tighten these, just snug them up. Get it down there. Okay. Everything seems to be working okay with the new springs. Alrighty, now we're going to reassemble the handle on the top. And I only took this all apart, as I mentioned earlier, just so you can give everything a good scrub. Ugh. Even though I scrubbed this pretty well, you can still see that the stuff just finds places to hide. And you know, if you really think about it, it's not that hard to take these apart and clean them every once in a while. Okay, you just position the handle the way it would normally be, like this, only upside down. And these little metal L brackets go in alongside through this double hole here into the handle, and you push them in far enough to where they get to this slot here so they won't move back and forth. Because once you get them in, these two tabs here are going to hold them into place. So same thing on the other side. Push it all the way in, straight up and down. Okay, now we're ready to reassemble the whole thing. This spout's going to match up with that. Now, the two slots here, you're going to want to pull over the slots here as you put this thing together. Okay, get them all the way, push them that way as hard as you can, and then everything else should be positioned to drop right back into place. Just snap it into place there. And there you pretty much have it. The handle won't drop down because it doesn't drop down until these things go in, which happens when you put it on the container. Oh, I see a little problem here. When I was assembling it, this hinge came out. So we're going to take it apart again. It didn't happen the first time. Know what's in there. Son of a gun. Uh-oh. Oh, I see. I didn't get the handle down far enough. My bad. Come on out of there. How did that happen? I didn't break it, did I? I don't think so. It's in there, right? Okay, you've got the handle in now. To reassemble this, these two tabs here are going to, or slots are going to slide over these tabs as it goes away from you. Hold those pins in place there. I'm going to do it with the handle up. Slide them over the tabs. Give them a pretty firm push. And then press down over here. Should hear a pretty good snap, and this will start working again. The handle won't drop down until these white things are depressed. That's because when you, and this will release it. This is how it should have worked before. That handle should have stayed down on its own, and now those springs are working perfectly. Now when this handle gets up so far, these things lock it into place. And those things get depressed when you put it into the container. So right now the handle won't close. Close. But when you put it in the container and those tabs are depressed, the handle does close, it's locked. Okay. Alright, we're going to put this up on the actual Ninja base and see how she works. Lid on the actual blender base, firmly closed, handle down, and it stayed locking on its own. And we got to have those triangles lined up there. Got to have this securely locked into place. We'll hit the power, and without me holding it down, let's see if she runs. That seems to take care of it. And that's what happened when the lid pops off. But that's not going to happen anymore with the new springs in there. Okay, we're good to go. I hope this video helps you out. I surfed the internet quite a bit trying to find a way to repair one of these, and all I could basically find was that you had to buy a new one, but you don't. So you saved yourself over $30 for $1.50's worth of springs and maybe hopefully 15 to 30 minutes of your time. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like all my videos or any of them, please subscribe. Thank you.